What are the key aspects of a national curriculum that are useful for teachers? Having a common curriculum enables the preparation of teachers and the continuing education of teachers to be the same across the country. So as teachers move around, as students move around, as the universities organize the preparation of teachers, as in the infrastructure you organize the professional development of teachers, it's the same mathematics. And the mathematics can be more coherent and the whole system more coherent. And so any improvements build on prior improvements. And so the system can get better and better and better. So it's not changing like a pendulum, first this way and then that way, and all the work to make this improvement better is erased to make this improvement better. When it's incoherent, it's too much noise and it stays the same. Nothing gets better. What are the key aspects for teachers inside classrooms? Teachers want to know what to teach. They want to have the liberty to how to teach because they have to respond to their students, and it's always different. But what to teach, they want to know. Tell me what to teach. What's my job to teach? And what does it look like when my students do work that's good enough? How will I know when I've been successful? How do I know when the job is done? And that's what the standards are for. They tell the teacher what to teach, and they tell the teacher how to know when they've been successful with the students. How did I learn about teachers' expectations while we were writing the standards? Well, two ways. One is years before writing the standards, spending many days inside classrooms, not just my own, but visiting classrooms of many teachers. And not just classrooms in the United States, but visiting classrooms in other countries as well. And we were particularly interested in countries who have high performance. So the Japanese classrooms, for example, or in Singapore, but also in Canada, in England, in Europe. And then while we were writing the standards, listening to teachers, very systematically organizing input from teachers. So each state organized input from teachers, and we received that input from each state and had conversations. And national teacher organizations. There's a National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and they organized efforts. And the teachers' unions also. And we listened to teachers in all these ways. And also not just listening to their reaction to drafts that we write, but we also had questions. We didn't know everything. And we put the questions out and got responses. So there are a lot of questions at the young age where we have a lot of research that tells you what students can learn in the early grades. And we paid a lot of attention to that research and that evidence. And as you get into the older grades, we listened more to mathematicians about what was coherent so we could reduce how much students have to learn. It's very important to build a progression that makes sense to students. And to make sense to students, we have to listen to the researchers on learning and cognitive development, particularly in the younger grades. And we have to listen to mathematicians on what's logically coherent. So it's not one or the other, it's both. And then most of all, you have to listen to teachers. Does this make sense? Can you do this? What would we do differently? Well, we had a very short timeline, just as Brazil has a very short timeline. We had about the same. We had about a year and a half. And when you have to move fast, it's hard to listen fast. It's easy to write fast, but it's hard to listen. It's hard to iterate, go back and forth enough times. So that was a little hectic. But that's the way it is. We have to accept the timeline. There's the opportunity. If you go slower, it's not necessarily better. One thing we did not do because of how fast we had to go was produce examples for each of the standards of student work, student assignments, and the written work of students to show teachers what it looks like when their students do the work that meets the standards. And I wish we had organized the work of gathering student work and publishing it with the standards so that a year after the standards came out, the student work would come out. And we're still doing that now, and it's happening slowly. I strongly recommend that Brazil organize that effort now so that after the standards come out, the student work keeps coming in year 2, year 3, year 4. And that builds a community in the teachers of what should my students be doing. That's what teachers need to know. What should my students be doing? And how do I know they're doing well? What worked well? We did not, the writers, the actual authors, were people who worked on a design process to solve an educational problem based on evidence. We did not work on solving a political problem. And this was very important. To solve a political problem, you compromise, you reach consensus, you create language that does not offend people, you create language that's vague. But when that gets to the teacher, the standards are vague exactly where they need them to be clear and precise. And they're clear and precise exactly where they don't need that, because everybody already knows that. And so it's not a very good tool for the teachers. And so we had a political process that surrounded the writing process, but other people did the political work while we did the writing work. And we were able to focus on solving the educational problem. And so we were aware of the political process, and we interacted with it in ways which were measured, not too excessively. We did not have to write to satisfy political needs. We did not have to write to make it popular. It became popular because it made sense and it was coherent and it was focused, and because it was useful educationally. Because in the end, it's not how popular it is on the day it's published. It's how popular it is after people have been using it for a few years. If it works, it will be popular for the right reason. I think every time you write standards, it's so easy when you think of something good to just write it into the standards, and before long you're asking for too much in the time that teachers and students have. And so keeping under control so we're not asking for too much was very difficult. And you have to leave good things out of the curriculum so there's time to do a good job with the good things that are in the curriculum. So I think that was hardest. Making the progressions coherent was a lot of work, a lot of detail, a lot of engineering, a lot of design. And it cannot be done in a big committee. It's a small number of people. You need to put diagrams on the wall, and you need to work. It's very well crafted. But that wasn't difficult. It was satisfying work because you could make progress. It wasn't frustrating, but it was a lot of detail work. And you have to organize a process for writing where small numbers of people can do that detailed work. So it's not just a list of topics. It's a really well-designed progression. There were disagreements that were important disagreements, and we, in the end, had to decide what to do. And I think our decisions were not compromises. They were things that would make sense. So even people who did not win the argument respected the result because they were listened to, and the result made a different sense than they wanted, but still it made sense. First, you are early on a very important road and you've organized things well. You're heading down the right road. The standards you produce after 1 year only need to be good enough. They don't have to be perfect. They cannot be perfect. You have to look, it's a 10-year process, and you want things in the classrooms to start getting better in year 1. But you don't want them to finish getting better in year 1. You want year 2 to be better than 1, and 3 to be better than 2. And you should look at it by year, every year better than the last, instead of worrying about when are we going to finish. And the standards will need to be, if they're good enough, they can be fixed later. This, that, and we know there are mistakes in our standards, and we'll need to fix those, and already people are making adjustments. So, the advice is, get down that road. You're going very fast, that's okay. Look at what other nations have done. We learned, for example, that the Japanese paid a lot of attention to how much can fit in 1 year of teaching. And so when we had a question, do we have too much in 3rd grade? We looked at how much the Japanese had and what they had. So we got very good advice from looking at the Japanese standards on the question of how much can go there in that grade. And you can look at the standards we made. You can look at what Australia has done, a lot of wonderful work in standards. And so looking at other countries, you don't have to start from scratch and learn from what they did. You have to listen to everybody, but you have to make decisions based on education, not on politics. So the main purpose of politics is to make it possible for everybody's voice to be heard and to really pay attention and to organize and make sense of what they're saying. But in the end, you have to make an education decision, not ignoring it, but not doing it to please the crowd. The crowd doesn't want to be pleased. They want something well made.